Greetings, friends, and welcome to this week's episode of the Shumate News Forum. I'm Rich Shumate. I'm coming to you from beautiful Little Rock, Arkansas, where we have been enjoying several days of 115-degree heat indexes. So it's only going to be in the 90s today, where there's a nip in the air here in Arkansas. So I wanted to start this week by talking about some polling numbers, and some polling numbers that have to be rather alarming to people who are Republicans, who are by their name, who are going to be on the ballot in November. So we had 8 presidential approval polls drop this week. In 6 of those 8, Donald Trump's approval was in the 30s. In 4 of them, his disapproval was in the 60s. And so that led to some really large spreads in these polls between approval and disapproval. So if someone has more disapproval than approval, we say they're underwater. And in this case, far underwater and maybe ready to drown. So Trump 30 points underwater in CNN, 33 points underwater in AP, 26 points underwater in Quinnipiac, which also had his approval rating at 32%, which of course is much closer to the 20s than it is to the 40s. And one of the things that's interesting about this to me is, during both of Trump's terms, one of the things that we've seen is that there seemed to be a floor to his approval rating. It generally was somewhere in the lower 40s. His approval ratings were rarely great, or have rarely been great, but they rarely dropped below that. And there seemed to be just sort of a floor of core supporters that would approve of what he did no matter what he did. And that floor appears to be falling, is what's going on here. And we've also seen some polling numbers on particular issues that may point to the reason for that, and some more trouble ahead for Republicans. And for example, on inflation, do you approve of how Trump's handling inflation? The disapproval in some of those polls on that question was in the 70s. Likewise, disapproval of the Iran war is also in the 70s. And to the degree that economics and war drive voter intention, and there are oodles and oodles of batches of political science that support that premise, again, not a good time to have an R by your name in November. There was also another poll that had some interesting results by Emerson. Emerson did what's called a generic congressional ballot. So a generic congressional ballot is essentially a poll where you ask people, are you going to vote Republican or are you going to vote Democrat, and you don't attach any names to it. And the Emerson poll found that Democrats had an 11-point advantage, which is something we just don't ever see. Now, it's an outlier. Other polls have shown Democrats with an advantage, but certainly not that much. But what I always tell my journalism students when I'm talking to them about how you cover polls is, don't pay attention to the number, pay attention to the trend. The number at any particular point in time is not as important as what the trend is over time. And in this particular poll, a year ago, the generic congressional ballot was about even. And so there has been an 11-point shift in a year. And we see this in this poll and also in the presidential approval polls, that if you track these over time, what we're seeing is it sort of looks like an alligator, and the mouth is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. If in November we had anything close to people voting for Democrats over Republicans by a margin of 11 points, that would be not just historic, but I think apocalyptic for Republicans. Again, this is an outlier. No indication that the margin is going to be that big. Doubtful that it will. But I think it does indicate the deteriorating political position that Republicans are facing. There were also some Senate polls that sort of showed the same thing. So Fox News, which some of us might perceive as a conservative mouthpiece, but it actually has a polling unit that's very well regarded and considered. They did polls in 4 Senate races. They found John Ossoff, the Democrat, trying to hold his seat in Georgia up by 13 points. Roy Cooper, the former Democratic governor of North Carolina, who is trying to claim an open Senate seat, up by 9. Democrat Sherrod Brown, who is a former U.S. Senator who lost his seat 2 years ago, trying to make a comeback in Ohio, up 8 points. And then Josh Turek in Iowa, who's running for an open seat, also up 4 points. Turek's also interesting this week in that he came out with a new ad that is strange but kind of intriguing, where he basically plays a game of horse with Barack Obama, although they call it Iowa instead of horse, for 2 minutes and 30 seconds while they chat with each other. And I would go, if you're interested in it, go on. You can find it on YouTube. I'm not sure whether they're actually running it as an ad because it's so long, but strangely intriguing, and I think it really works. One of the more interesting political ads of this cycle. One of the races that wasn't polled here, but that I kind of wanted to put on your radar, is here in Arkansas, where I live. So our senator, Tom Cotton, you may know him, very tall, likes to bomb things. He is running for re-election, and he is running against the Democratic nominee is Hallie Schaffner, who has an intriguing backstory. She is a sixth-generation rice farmer, and her family couldn't make a go of it with their rice farm anymore, so they sold up and got out. And she burst onto the political scene here in Arkansas at a rogue town hall. So some people in Little Rock just organized a town hall to protest the fact that our congressmen and senators never hold town halls anymore. And she spoke at this and sort of told her personal story and sort of stole the show and then decided to run for the U.S. Senate. No polling to indicate that this is competitive, and Arkansas is a very Republican state, but some indication that Tom Cotton is taking it seriously because they have reserved a $2 million ad buy. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot in California or Florida or Texas, but we only have 2 television markets in Arkansas, so $2 million goes a long way. So that might be something that might materialize depending on whether there's a blue wave in November and how big the blue wave is. There was another episode this week that was particularly troubling. So this was a hearing with the Senate Homeland Security Committee, in which the Republican senators decided that they were going to haul in Anthony Fauci, a brilliant scientist who spent decades and decades protecting the public health of Americans, and beat up on him, advancing specious conspiracy theories and disinformation in what became just a really disgraceful display. Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky was the kangaroo leading this kangaroo court and was just particularly unhinged. At one point, when Fauci's lawyer decided to speak or wanted to speak, he threw him out of the room. And I think the really sad and disturbing part of this was you could just tell by watching it the effect that this is having on Dr. Fauci. He seemed beaten down. He seemed a little resigned when he read his opening statement, in which he explained why he was going to take the fifth to avoid the perjury trap that Rand Paul was clearly setting for him. His hands were shaking, and just really appalling to see such a dedicated public servant subjected to this. So, Dr. Fauci, if you're watching, we appreciate you, we love you, we respect what you've done, and when the history of this time is written, you will be remembered as a hero, and Rand Paul won't be remembered at all. Also this week, CBS unveiled the new correspondents for 60 Minutes to replace veteran correspondents like Scott Pelley, who were either fired or forced out. And I would say that I think I missed an opportunity here to have submitted my application for this, because I am much more qualified to be a correspondent on 60 Minutes than some of the people that they hired. And the person that's coming in for the most scrutiny is a guy named Ross Douth, who is a conservative opinion writer at the New York Times, no broadcast journalism experience, no journalism experience that we know of, and being handed one of the premier jobs in American journalism. Only two of the people that they hired had specific broadcast experience. One is Nora O'Donnell, who has been on the program periodically before, former CBS Evening News anchor. Trevor Phillips, who also has television news experience. But other than that, we have some filmmakers. We have a former correspondent for Vice News. And it's pretty clear from the lineup that they have put forward that the investigative reporting that is 60 Minutes brand, that it's known for, is clearly going to be de-emphasized, because there's no other explanation for why you would make these hires for people who cannot do that kind of journalism. And so it seems a bit short-sighted to me that you would take one of the premier brands in investigative journalism and try to dismantle it for no particular reason, particularly given that 60 Minutes has not been having a ratings problem. I mean, the ratings have been good. So there really is no reason to change what you've been doing and what you've been doing for 60 years, but perhaps Barry Weiss is wiser than I, and this will not end in heartache for CBS. Another story this week that's interesting and hasn't gotten a lot of traction, so I thought I would bring it to you all. There was a school district in upstate New York that decided that it was going to buy a humanoid robot to offer, to interact with students and offer instruction in a high school. And her name's Sally. She cost $50,000. One of the teachers who would criticize this in a news story I read about it described Sally as kind of creepy. And I saw a picture of Sally. She is kind of creepy. And to make this, what sort of fueled this controversy even more, is that this high school serves a Native American community, and most of the students who would be subject to Sally's ministrations would be Native American, which sort of raised the specter of, experimenting on Native children with a robot. And this ran into just a tremendous buzzsaw of opposition, so much so that the school district relented, decided that they were not going to do this. So Sally has gone back in her box, sadly, and I'm not sure if she's on her way back to the manufacturer. Another odd thing about this is the company that sold Sally had either purchased or merged with another small company many years ago, and that company at one point had made sex dolls, which was seized upon by the people who were not in favor of Sally in the classroom. The company said that was unfair because they had never actually made sex dolls, but it certainly was a useful rhetorical argument for people opposed to this. So, long story short, Sally will not make her debut in the classroom this fall. We also this week had some more machinations and to and fro in the never-ending saga of Where's Mitch, as in Mitch McConnell, last seen in public being wheeled out of his house on a stretcher. And this week, Andy Beshear, the Democratic governor of Kentucky, sent a very blunt and sharply worded letter to McConnell himself, basically saying you either need to come out and demonstrate that you're, alive and kicking, or you need to resign. And I think Beshear acted to do this because he started being criticized for not doing more to try to get to the bottom of what was going on with McConnell. And of course, Beshear is considering running for president in 2028. So there were people on social media sort of saying, well, he's disqualifying himself from being the Democratic nominee in 2028 if he doesn't do more about this. And so he pushed a little harder. But he also went on a podcast and made what I think are a couple of salient points. One was that Democrats actually benefit by having this seat vacant because McConnell isn't there to cast votes, and it actually reduced the Republican majority to 2 from 3. And he also pointed out that that this, given that there's only 5 months left in this term, and that the best that you could hope for would be a special election, that there isn't particularly a huge amount of political upside to this for Democrats that would be better than keeping the seat vacant. Pointing out, of course, that Democrats have not won a congressional race in Kentucky in more than 30, or a Senate race in Kentucky in more than 30 years. So we'll continue to monitor that and see if Mitch ever comes forward. But I think Andy Beshear, is trying to navigate some tricky waters here in this. And then I wanted to sort of close this week by talking about some things that are going on next week. We have, next week is chock full of primaries. So we're getting into the end of the primary season, which will conclude in August. And there are actually primaries this week on Tuesday in 5 states: Michigan, Kansas, Virginia, Washington, and Wisconsin. And then Tennessee is having a primary on Thursday. So Tennessee, for some reason, has elections on odd days. This one's on Thursday. Sometimes they have elections on Saturday in Tennessee. And I think the 2 races to perhaps keep an eye on would be the Republican primary for governor in Tennessee, where Senator Marsha Blackburn and a congressman named John Rhodes are competing in the Republican primary and have been trying to out-MAGA each other by becoming more and more extreme. And the Democratic race for the U.S. Senate in Michigan, in which Abdul El Sayed, a progressive Muslim, is in a race against the establishment pick, which is Haley Stevens. She's a congresswoman. So this is the latest battle between progressives and the establishment that we've seen in this primary cycle. And AIPAC, the pro-Israel PAC, has come into this race in a big way, pouring in about $50 million on behalf of Stevens. But heading into the primary, the polls appear like that's not going to work. El Sayed has had a lead, and his lead has persisted. So that's one to definitely keep on your radar screen when you grab your popcorn on Tuesday night and watch election results, which is what we do at my house. All right, so thank you all for your time, and I hope everyone has a great week.